Hello!
Hello, AOS fans!
It's the Agents of Underworlds.
Or is it? No, it is.
Yeah.
Pete, you've got a theory.
There's theories bounding around all over the internet, and we're going to examine them now and talk about, has Underworlds been cancelled?
And you might be able to guess one of us is more convinced than the other. So where did all this come from?
Well, there was a leak from 4chan of all places, so you know.
So you read it on the internet?
I read it it was in the internet. I mean, we're actually going to read it these days. It's not going to be in the newspaper, is it? We're sitting there reading that. I say!
Underworld news, probably not.
There was a 4chan posting someone had put up, and it was supposedly loads of leaks about stuff that was going to happen on GW. There were a few things on there that were true or have sort of come about to be proven true, and one of those things was Underworlds was going to be cancelled. This was going to be the last year of Underworlds.
Well, there's two things. One is, I think it would be a source if it had come from Channel 4 rather than 4chan. Also, wasn't that list like Nostradamus? If you predict enough things, some of them will come true. There was an awful lot of things on that list. A lot of them directly contradicted each other. A lot of them turned out to be utter nonsense.
That is true, that is true. But my second point, which I think is even more damning than the first, is by this time last year we had a roadmap of what was to come for the year of 2023.
And that is a little bit more damning, I will give you that.
Yeah.
However, this is Games Workshop we're talking about. If there's any consistency to their communications with the public, it's that they're incredibly inconsistent.
That is true.
So we've had roadmaps for periods, not roadmaps for other periods. They possibly even think they've done a roadmap and forgotten.
The third point on the list is that all of the Underworld's warbands have been moved to Legends for AOS, which means they are no longer available for tournament play, competitive play.
Okay, so could it be argued that this point essentially boils down to units that almost nobody played in AOS can no longer be played in AOS? And also, if you're trying to do a whole new version of AOS, then maybe it's better just to push away some of the lesser used bits just to keep balancing it easier and stop having, you don't have to reprint quite as much.
Yeah, got a point. But one piece of information we do have from the inside track, we do know some people who run gaming stores, and they have from the bestsellers list that GW produced PDFs, and Underworlds isn't on it.
Not on the bestsellers list.
Not on that bestsellers list.
Ergo, it's not a bestseller.
I mean, yeah.
Well, that could be a reason to cut it. I'd have to concede that if it's not a bestseller, but I don't know how those lists work. But yeah, okay, not on the bestsellers list isn't a great thing for Underworlds. But how often does it turn up on there? I don't know.
Also, from our contacts at those gaming stores, they noticed that the looking for your next sales page on GW's website, all of this is public as well.
It's not secret.
It's not secret. No, you can go and look it up. That doesn't have Underworlds on it either.
Okay, so they're not promoting it directly to FLGSs.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a little bit concerning, but maybe it's just the time of year. Big AOS release. They're about to push Necromunda as well, aren't they, for a big new box? Maybe that's that. I have to say, that and the lack of roadmap is a little bit worrying. I'd like to know, it's a weird thing, but I'd like to know what was coming next.
Another inside track element from our game store contacts is that the weekly update list they send out for all the products that they brought in, all the stuff coming in, all the stuff going out, has 5 Underworlds lines removed from it. And it's not on the deleted sheet, so they haven't really made it obvious that they're removing it, but they have removed 5 items, and one of those is the starter box that came out just last year, and the Headsman's Curse that also only came out last year.
I did some deep dive on this. When I say a deep dive, I got our contact to do a couple of searches for me. The Gore Chosen of Drom and the Headsman's Curse were actually available for almost identical lengths of time. That said, Hexbanes were available for about 8 months longer. So, but is that to do with the popularity of Warbands? I never quite know with Underworlds.
Yeah.
Do they just make a job lot and sell them? And once they're gone, they're gone. And obviously, once they're gone, they can't keep selling them, so they come off the lists. Or do they keep printing them throughout the year? I never know with these mixed card stock things, so they don't get made in Britain, do they? The cards.
True.
So maybe they've just sold it. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe they've sold it out faster than they expected.
Hexbanes were so popular, maybe they did a second print run of them, whereas the other ones they weren't as popular.
They were popular for City of Sigmar AOS Army.
That's true.
Players, weren't they? So maybe. Yeah. I'm going to be positive. I always like to put positive spin on things. I think it's because things sold out quickly. So. But it isn't worth, because they keep rolling on, it isn't worth them reprinting them at this point in time. Yeah. That's my theory.
Could be. But can you explain then the fact that we haven't heard anything from GW about Underworlds in any form since April, 3 odd months ago now, when they brought out Wintermore?
3 months isn't very long.
Seems like forever.
Well, I know it does, but it's not really very long. No. But we've had AOS all that time, all their community focus has been on that. Secondly, although yes, since April, we did have about 6 months of releases in what felt like about 2 weeks immediately prior to that April release, when quite frankly we just thought, can you please leave us alone, stop creating new stuff. If they had released that in mid-May, if they released the whatever it was called with the new 4 old warbands regenerated, they released that in May, we'd be happy as Larry now and really pleased.
This is true.
So maybe just, I reckon that's a logistics thing. I reckon it all arrived in the UK all at the same time. They just thought, right, let's get it out, because that seems to be the way they work. So that's my explanation for that.
Yeah,
and again, why would they bother doing that extra warband box for the 4 warbands? Why bother redoing them? Why bother reworking them if you actually were just going to throw it away?
But we know people who were talking to people at GW and who knew that they were actively looking for playtesters around the end of 2023 and so on. But now they go back to them to try and say, hey, we're ready to do some playtesting, have basically been ghosted, and GW haven't responded or really got into touch with anybody at all. In
my experience of GW, and I hope if any of you are watching, I do love you very much. In my experience, if they don't want to talk to you or they found an alternative solution to their problem, they just don't bother coming back. And so maybe they found their playtesters from somewhere else, and this person is kind of like, you missed the playtest bus, mate, sorry, but it's not my job to write and tell you that. A few other reasons for why I don't think it's going anywhere. GW, they're normally pretty upfront about this stuff. When stuff's finished, they just say, this is going to finish. They haven't said, Underworlds is going to finish. I don't see any point for them just to let it die a slow death.
I mean, stuff with like the Stormcast and things like that, and the Warcry warband stuff, they all got cut, and that was pretty much it. Beastmen were just gone. But GW's organisation, you can't depend on them, so whilst they're usually quite upfront, maybe they've just let this one slip through the gaps because it's Underworlds. They don't care too much to give it the right send-off.
They've literally forgotten about it.
They've literally forgotten about it.
Well, that's a possibility. Another rebuttal point I have is that, as we know, GW work quite a long time in advance on these things.
It's true.
18 months. And it was probably 18 months, 2 years ago, they were looking for new people to work on Underworlds and Warcry. So why would they cancel Underworlds and Warcry? And this goes into your point about the playtesting. If they were looking for playtesters a year ago, they must have stuff that they're designing 18 months or more into the future. So I think that suggests that there's still more stuff out there.
Although, again, GW's organisation, they might have just stopped bothering to look and not told anyone that they just stopped bothering.
There's a World Championships for the game in November, so it seems like a really daft thing, A, to have that World Championships, and then B, that it finished in October. That seems like madness.
That is true, but again, GW organisation skills, and there isn't a grand clash going on this autumn/winter time when there normally is a grand clash at Warhammer Worlds, and they've probably already given out and sold tickets to a world event, so they probably have to run that anyway, even if they have stopped the game.
Well, that is true. And I will just keep saying, you keep saying GW's organisational skills. I will just point out they are a multi-million-dollar company that makes money hand over fist, so they are quite good at organising. Of course, maybe Underworld isn't making the money hand over fist, and maybe that adds grist to your meal, I don't know. Of course, this is a bit of light-hearted fun, which I find quite unnerving because Pete's got this silly hat on, but we don't always wear our tinfoil hats, or Pete doesn't, I don't think.
No,
always.
Not often.
It is a little bit unnerving, but I do feel a bit like it's like the Royal Family when Kate wasn't very well. You know, people start going, oh, they haven't done anything, oh, they haven't done anything. It's like, well, you know, then you start to get nervous in yourself, because we have been worried about it a little bit. But like I said in the video earlier, I tend to look on the bright side of life, and I think that it's just a case of a lull in communication rather than a lull in game product.
And as you pointed out, we did get an absolute avalanche of stuff not that long ago, and we haven't played with a lot of those combinations yet. And in fact, we as a consumer are quite funny in that if we get loads of stuff, we complain about it, and if we don't get any stuff for a while, we complain about it.
Yeah, there is a very, very narrow path.
Yeah.
The sweet spot, because I do totally feel like that until I had a bit of a come back round to the game a little bit, but until last week I was like, oh, I can't be bothered to play with Hungering Parasite and Rhineworks. I don't really understand how they work, and I know. But at the same time I was like, but maybe if I knew what else was coming next, I might feel more energised.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's very, very inconsistent. I mean, if Underworld stopped tomorrow, I think most people say, well, the game's dead, we can't do anything with it now. And yet all of us who've played from day one have got 60 warbands and a crazy amount of cards. You could carry on playing this game forever. I mean, I know I talk about chess quite a lot. Nobody's updated chess in a really long time, and yet people manage to play it.
Would people out there, and let us know in the comments below what you think, would you stop playing Underworlds if they canned it tomorrow?
I think we would, but only because you guys out there would stop watching it.
Exactly,
So we will go off to go and find the next thing.
And maybe that's part of the death of a game, in that the minute a larger majority of people say the game's dead, I'm going to move away. Content producers stop producing content for the game, so they go on something else, and it means that the game stops being in the general
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly, yes. If Underworlds were to go away, we would be very sad.
Well, definitely. And to go back to your earlier question of what is the sweet spot, I have to say, GW, if you are listening this far down our video, the sweet spot is, if you're going to do a core box every 6 months, which I don't necessarily agree with, but the sweet spot is, this is going to come out in October, this is going to come out in April, then there's going to be another release in June and another release in December and whatever, and so we have a continual pathway.
When Nullwood came out, and it went through Nullwood and Weird Hollow and through.
Yeah.
We were in the gold age at that point because they were releasing something. Yeah, it was every 6 months core boxes. That was a bit much. But then you get a Warband out every 2-3 months. You were getting a Rivals deck with that. It kept things fresh. It kept things moving.
And it was consistent. So it was in theory, it was consistent. So you knew where you were going to be.
Yeah.
Which I really liked. But the communication is a bit frustrating. There was one time we thought, well, we're not going to get a Rivals deck this time because it wasn't on the roadmap, and then boop, one appears with everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, consistent releases and even consistent comms. I had thought they did that Meta Watch thing with Nick and John, and I thought, oh, this is really good. Maybe they'll do one of these every quarter or even every 6 months. But that was
well
about
over
6 months
9
ago.
months ago, and that was it.
Yeah, and they were really good. And again, that makes the community feel like this is a game that's been thought about and supported. Because I think part of the problem is GW are in danger of killing their own game by ignoring it. Because people think, well, it doesn't really feel like it's very supported. I'm not going to bother buying into it. And I feel like 3 months ago we would never have said that. As I said, how fickle we all are. We would never have said that because it felt like the game was going really great guns. But I think, it does feel like, I suppose it's just, you just want to know that there's some love for the game that you love.
And it's funny that I don't know when that became a thing about thinking about the support of a game. Like when I bought Space Hulk, I didn't sit and think, oh, but are there going to be any extra releases? I didn't care. I had Space Hulk. It was awesome, and that was what I was going to play. So,
I'm going to blame capitalism,
yeah,
as I normally do.
I think that's a very good shout. So let us know in the comments below what you're feeling about all of this at the minute. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell as always.
Absolutely, and if you would like to support us on Patreon, do feel free to do that. There's a link in the video below, and as long as they keep making Underworlds, we'll keep making Underworlds videos.
So we'll see you soon, maybe in the Underworlds.